mysterious metal spheres dropping into forests, rocks from other solar systems, and a mystery sphere from who knows where. These are strange objects that seem to come from another universe. In 2019, a guy in Crimea named Gennady Borisov looked through a telescope he built himself and spotted something fuzzy moving across the sky. Turned out it was actually the second known interstellar object and the first one that looked like a normal comet. Telescopes all over the world locked onto it. A lot about it seemed pretty normal and had a tail, shed dust, and behaved like comets do when sunlight heats them up. But the strange part was the amount of carbon monoxide inside it. Observatories in Chile picked that up and reported levels way higher than what we usually see in comets from our solar system. That meant it was very likely that it formed in a much colder place than where our comets are born. And because it acted like a regular comet, scientists had more time to study it than they did with something like Oumuamua. More on that later. They watched it break apart as it got closer to the sun in early 2020. They analyzed its dust, its gases, even the direction the fragments spun. Pretty amazing this comet came from a totally different star system and was discovered by a guy with a homemade telescope, so they named it after him, 2I Borisov. Now, I'll admit that the Hypatia Stone doesn't look super exciting, but it's probably the most unique pebble ever discovered. It was found in 1996 in a patch of desert glass in southwestern Egypt. For years, it sat in collections without much attention, but when researchers finally took a deeper look at it, they realized just how weird this thing is. The chemistry inside it didn't match anything you'd find on Earth. It didn't match any known meteorite either. Some of the minerals inside are extremely unusual. The ratios of certain elements aren't what you see in typical space rocks. Even the carbon inside it is strange. Instead of being mixed with silicon or other common stuff, parts of it seem almost unnaturally pure, more like industrial diamond or graphite. In 2018, a research team in South Africa published results showing that the stone might contain material that formed before our sun even existed. And there's still debate about exactly how the stone formed, but the most plausible theory is that it formed out of a supernova billions of years ago. In 1974, the Betz family was checking out damage from a brush fire on their property in Jacksonville, Florida, and they found a perfectly smooth metal sphere lying in the grass. It's about the size of a bowling ball, weighed around 20 pounds. They took it home, and things only got stranger. They noticed it rolled around in ways that didn't make sense. See, if someone nudged it, it sometimes rolled back the other way. When they put it on a table, it would stop right near the edge instead of rolling off. The family said it made little ringing noises too, and sometimes gave off soft vibrations. Reporters eventually came to the house to interview the eldest son, Terry Betz, about the weird find. The US Navy also examined it. They said that the metal matched high-quality stainless steel used in industrial machinery. That explained the material, but it didn't explain the movement of the sphere or the strange sound it would make. And it wasn't just the family saying this. There were multiple witnesses who said it rolled in ways that almost felt deliberate. To this day, we've never gotten a definitive explanation for this case. Next up is another mysterious object called the Buga sphere. Now, I'm just gonna come out and say that this is a really sketchy case. There are some very obvious AI articles about this thing and supposed images showing this metallic sphere with these alien-looking etchings on it. Supposedly it can fly. I don't know, it seems a little too insane not to be like headline news everywhere, and my BS detectors went way off, but I mean, there is some truth to this story. Maybe there's some exaggeration going on, or maybe it is as crazy as it sounds. I don't know, but there are a lot of articles about this thing. Anyway, back in March, a metal sphere dropped out of the sky near Buga, Colombia. It crashed into some woods on a farmer's property. People nearby heard the impact. When they went to investigate, they found this big, smooth, almost perfectly round object sitting in a crater. It didn't have any seams, as you'd normally expect to see on satellite parts, for example, and scientists from the Colombian Air Force and universities took a look at it and found that it actually wasn't a single piece of metal. It had layers inside it made of different alloys. Some of those layers looked like aerospace materials, but others weren't so easy to identify. Couldn't say for sure where this thing came from. The condition of the sphere also raised some questions. Most space debris burns up or breaks apart on the way down, but this thing was, even though they didn't know what it was perfectly round and seemingly intact. So the military made sure to be very cautious about handling it. They didn't know if it was pressurized or radioactive or what. And right now, the object is still being studied. When the Tunguska explosion flattened a massive section of Siberian forest in 1908, nobody found a crater or many big chunks of a meteorite. And that was incredibly strange. For a long time, it was a total mystery. Decades later, they discovered tiny clues in the area, microscopic metal spheres and grains of melted minerals. These tiny spheres are made of nickel and iron and whatnot, and basically materials that point to a space rock entering Earth's atmosphere, heating up and exploding apart before hitting the ground. That would explain why trees were flattened in a huge circle, but no crater formed. Researchers collected these particles during trips to the site in the 50s and 60s, and again in later studies. Some were found inside old tree resin, stuck in place from the moment they landed. The melted mineral grains also showed temperatures high enough to vaporize rock, which lines up with a mid-air explosion. These little spheres don't solve every part of the Tunguska mystery, but they do give us one solid piece of physical evidence. Something from space exploded over Siberia that morning. Next on the list, we have angel hair. It sounds super bizarre, and it is, but there are documented cases where tons of these thin white fibers have drifted down from the sky, and they disappear once you touch them. People describe it like sticky spider webs that melt away in your hands. One of the most famous events happened in France in 1952. People saw objects in the sky, and then watched long strands falling all over the town. Kids ran through the streets grabbing handfuls of it, but the fibers broke apart and vanished. Another major case happened in Florence, Italy in 1954. A soccer match actually stopped because the sky filled with these strands floating down onto the field. Some of it was collected and analyzed, and the samples looked similar to spider silk. There have been similar reports scattered across the world throughout the years. The common theme is that the fibers almost always disintegrate before anyone can store them properly. Sometimes scientists chalk it up to ballooning spiders. If you've never heard of that, which I hadn't until today, pretty cool. So this is when spiders climb to a high point, lift their back end, release tiny strands of silk, and then when the breeze catches it, they get pulled up into the air. The threads almost act as a kite, sometimes carrying them a few feet, sometimes miles. That's how spiders will end up on ships in the ocean, on rooftops, places that seem impossible for a spider to reach. Also might explain why Spider-Man was always shooting his webs and it didn't look like it was attaching to a building, but somehow he was swinging and maybe it was just the air catching him. That's all the way back to the 60s show though. But anyway, I digress. The amount of this so-called angel hair that falls in these rare cases makes it hard for a lot of people to just chalk up to spiders. So at this point, there's still no definitive explanation for this. Miners in South Africa have been finding these strange little stone spheres for years while working in ancient rock layers around Klerksdorp. Some are perfectly round, others look like flattened discs with little grooves running around them. The rock layers where they're found are billions of years old. You look at these spheres, they really do look unnatural. They're smooth, they have symmetry, and some of the grooves wrap around them seemingly too perfectly, like someone carved them with an electric tool. That led to years of speculation about what they were, but when geologists studied them closely, the explanation ended up being a natural process that just happened to create shapes that look artificial. The spheres form through something called concretion. Minerals build up a central point over an insane amount of time. The grooves appear because different layers hardened at different rates. In December 2012, people near Polonnaruwa in Sri Lanka saw a fireball streak across the sky. And not long after that, strange rock fragments started turning up on the ground. Researchers collected the pieces. It became very clear that this was not Earth rock. It had a melted outer layer, like it had been cooked coming through the atmosphere. It had unusual minerals inside. Researchers put the fragments under a microscope. They said they saw tiny shapes inside the rock that looked like diatoms, which are microscopic algae with these hard glass-like shells. That claim became kind of controversial because other scientists immediately said the samples could have been contaminated after they landed, or that they didn't handle the samples carefully enough and material from Earth could have gotten mixed in. So there was a lot of back and forth, and we still can't say for certain if this microscopic algae was caused by contamination of the samples or if it was in the rock the whole time. Extraterrestrial algae. Life from outer space. In 2019, astronomers in Australia were scanning the sky with a powerful radio telescope when they noticed giant circles out in deep space that nobody had seen before. These things were huge, some wider than entire galaxies, but you can't see them with normal light. They only show up when you look at the sky in radio waves, which is why they stayed hidden until recently. Eventually got the nickname odd radio circles, or ORCs, because that's exactly what they look like. Strange, giant glowing rings floating out in space. They don't look like anything else. They're not the leftovers of a supernova, they're not a galaxy, and they always show up as pretty much perfect circles. As more sky surveys were done, more ORCs started appearing. Some of them had faint galaxies sitting dead center inside the circle, like something happened around that galaxy a long time ago and sent a shockwave outward. Others didn't have anything obvious in the middle at all. Scientists have tossed around a few ideas, but none of them explain every circle, and since you can't see them in visible light, they're hard to study. When astronomers in Hawaii spotted Oumuamua in October 2017, they didn't know what to make of it at first. They tracked its path and realized it wasn't looping around the sun like a normal space rock. It came in from deep space, swung past Earth, and continued on. It didn't have a tail like a comet, but it still drifted a little off course, almost as if something gave it a tiny push. Usually that kind of movement means ice is melting and releasing gas, but that wasn't the case. It also wasn't shaped like anything familiar. It was long and skinny, kind of cigar-shaped instead of round. There was a ton of speculation at the time, with pretty prominent scientists like Avi Loeb saying there was a chance this thing, which was the first confirmed object from another star system to fly past us, he said it may have been an alien probe. Unfortunately, we only had a short window to look at it before it faded out of view. All we know for sure is that it wasn't from here. With all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.